Bhante Akāliko. Can I have your permission to start?
Yes, let's get started.
Thanks, Bhante. CO2 and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Dhamma Talk by Bhante Akāliko, organized by Maha Satipatthana Buddhist Society, Klang. Today is the 19th of March 2022. Other than the live video audience here, we're glad that this Dhamma sharing is also cross-broadcasted to various societies' Facebook pages. They are Setia Alam Sambodhi Buddhist Association, Klang and Coast Buddhist Association, Metta Lodge Pusat Buddhist Johor, Buddhist Zen Fellowship, Theravada Metta Buddhist Society, Shah Alam Buddhist Society, Bodhinyana International Foundation Hong Kong, Mahinda Rama Santipali School, Penang, Sramban Sudama Buddhist Society. Before we begin, let me go through some short housekeeping rules before we start. As you notice, all participants are not able to unmute to ask questions. You may raise your virtual hand and the tag admin will notify you to unmute. Please turn on your video and microphone to ask questions. Or you may type at the chat box. We are very grateful to have with us Bhante Akāliko. He was born as an Australian monk. That's the forest tradition of Thai Dhamma. Bhante Akāliko first encountered Buddhism as a teenager and spent over 20 years practicing in different traditions before taking full ordination with my favorite teacher, Ajahn Brahm, as his preceptor at Bodhinyana monastery in 2016. He is currently residing with his long-term teacher, Ajahn Sujato, at Lokanta Vihara, the monastery at the end of the world, Sydney, Australia. Maybe Bhante later will explain why it's called the end of the world. Well, Sydney is quite a happening city. Bhante Akaliko is the founder of Rain Bodhi LGBTQIAN Buddhist community, the Buddhist chaplain at Western Sydney University. He is also one of the board of directors of the Buddhist Council of New South Wales. That's all I have on Bhante's bio. Maybe Bhante would like to share more details of himself. The interesting topic today sharing is Samvega and spiritual urgency. For me, I see the topic as fear, anxiety of the reality of the endless cycle of birth and rebirth, old age, sickness, and death. Let us hear about what Bhante will review later. Bhante, can we request that you lead in the homage to the Buddha and administer the taking of 5 precepts? Now, let us compose our minds, put our palms together, and welcome Bhante. Over to you, Bhante.
Very good. And thank you to Terence and the good people at the Maha Satipatthana Buddhist Society Klang for inviting me to be with you here today. It's really great to see so many people here, and thank you very much for your welcome. I really appreciate this opportunity to be with people so far away and to share the Dharma together. So we're going to begin with the homage to the Buddha. And shall we all chant together? Is that a good way to do it?
Not over Zoom, Bhante.
Okay, so
you'll be doing the chanting, yeah.
So I chant and then you follow, is that right?
Yes. You won't hear any feedback from us, Bhante.
Okay.
It's a one way.
I hope that you're all in tune. So we begin with the Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. And now we'll recite the three the three refuges. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. And now we'll be taking the 5 precepts. So you can repeat after me or join in with me if maybe it's easier that way. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Suramereya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugatim yanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nibbuttim yanti, tasma silam visodaye. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So these precepts and these refuges and this homage to our teacher, the Buddha, are an opportunity for us to inspire our minds to develop some energy in the mind, to feel some lifting of our usual mundane, boring world into a realm that maybe makes us think a little bit more about the nature of this existence that we find ourselves in, and perhaps even question how we're living our life. Are we living it in accordance with the Dhamma? Are we taking the opportunity at every moment to develop our minds? And so this is a small introduction into the big picture theme that I want to explore with you today. I'm going to be sharing my screen on and off throughout the session. And as Terence mentioned, the theme of today's talk is Samvega and spiritual urgency. So some of you might have heard this term before. Perhaps you might know exactly what it means. Perhaps you only have a vague idea. If you want, you can put perhaps what you think it might be in the chat. And here we have this image of this person with their head on fire. Maybe you've heard these words in relation to a sutta. Maybe that will make you start thinking about what it actually is, this thing, Samvega. And I always like to begin with a bit of a vibe check, just to to give you an indication of what the session is going to be about. If it wasn't bad enough, we have a person with their head on fire. This image, we're all going to die. This serious message, I've tried to deliver it here with a bit of a happy vibe. It's quite a difficult theme, death. So what does this have to do with Samvega, I wonder? And this next image, a dark swirling portal on the wall and a small child looking up and the parent saying, "It's just the abyss, dear. Try not to gaze into it." And then just one more image to share with you. Perhaps something a bit more familiar in a Buddhist context, but something similar to that idea of not looking into the abyss. Perhaps you've heard the story of the Bodhisattva, the Buddha-to-be, when he escaped the palace, where he was being mollycoddled by his family and where the reality of life was shielded from his eyes. And then he escaped the monastery, escaped the palace and went out into the world. And he saw these sights. He saw for the first time a sick person. He saw for the first time an old person. He saw a corpse and he saw a sage. So this story of the Buddha, which actually isn't found in the suttas, but is found in the commentaries of the Buddha's life and found in various Jataka stories. This is one of the big mythologies of Buddhism. And it's a wonderful story because it's so powerful. We have this idea of a princely person, someone who is rich, noble, privileged, who is hidden from the world's vicissitudes, who doesn't know what's out there in the world. He's protected. He's screened from that world. And then he encounters that world. He encounters things that happen in that world. Old age happens. Sickness happens. Death happens. These are things that we too have to confront in our own lives. These are things which perhaps society in many ways tries to keep hidden from us. These are things that we try to keep hidden from ourselves, pushing them from the corner of our mind. We don't like to think about it. We don't like to talk about it. This idea of death scares us, troubles us. When the Bodhisattva, to be the Buddha, encountered these things in the world, he felt this experience of Samvega, this spiritual urgency, this fear, this strange, uncanny feeling that this was something that was troubling, deeply troubling. And that last sight, the sight of the sage, a spiritual practitioner, this was inspiration. This was a path that led away from these grim realities of old age, sickness, and death. This was an opportunity for escape, a motivation to practice a spiritual life. And so when it comes to thinking about these issues, confronting them head on is important for our spiritual practice. Seeing these things for what they are, old age, sickness, death, an inescapable fate, is an essential part of our spiritual development. And this is why monks like me or Buddhist culture, we like to think about these topics. We like to create a safe place for people to encounter these teachings so that they can ponder and reflect upon what it means And this is something that goes against the trajectory of the world, it goes against the way our society functions. Think about something like old age. We try so hard to pretend it's not something that's going to happen to us. We put on our moisturizer, we use a good filter on Instagram, we get a facelift perhaps, we dye our hair. We don't like to think it's going to happen to us. And perhaps, as is in the case in Australia, we hide our old people away from us, put them in nursing homes, retirement villages. We don't show them on television. We have young, fresh, healthy-looking stars. And the same with sickness. We don't like to believe that sickness is something that's going to happen to us. Even with the pandemic, we have spent several years now trying to avoid getting sick. Sure, we can sanitize our hands, wear a face mask, practice social distancing, but sickness is also something that is inescapable. And even right now in our bodies, things are going wrong. There's an ache, there's a pain, there's a soreness, perhaps there's even a disease developing inside our bodies right now. We also like to think that sickness is something that is unusual, something that is wrong, something that shouldn't happen. But of course, we know that sickness is something that is natural, that has to happen. We have a body, it gets sick. And similarly, of course, we have a body, we are born, we have to die. And there's no escaping death. Buddha frequently talked about old age, sickness, and death. He talked about reflecting on death, being aware, making it real in our minds by contemplating this inescapable fate. He said there were so many ways to die, so many future perils. Talked constantly about the brevity of life, impermanence. And so these three things, old age, sickness, and death, these are things that are intrinsically linked to the idea of Samvega. There's a kind of fear that might come up, an urgency that might be developed when we touch into these quite challenging, difficult subjects. But there's a few other things that can be added on to this list. And this will help make us add up to the 5 frequent reflections, which we're going to do in a few moments, a meditation on the 5 frequent reflections taught by the Buddha, which are old age, sickness, death, and then separation. Separation, this truth that everything that we are connected to in this life, everything that is dear and pleasing to us must become separate to us. It means our youth, our good looks, means our family, our friends who must die. It means our status, which can change so easily, our personal possessions, which can be stolen or taken away from us, or lost or broken. It means even this very body, which we mistake as being ours. Even we must become separate from this body at the end of our life. And so this truth of separation is something that the Buddha asks us to reflect upon. And the last of those 5 frequent reflections is the truth of karma. And so those first 4 reflections are a way for us to become familiar with the reality of what it means to be alive, the reality of existence, the truth of impermanence, of not self. And this last one, karma, this is something slightly different. This is an ethical dimension. This is a a spiritual invitation to think about what it means to live, what it means to practice a spiritual path. It's an invitation to question, how am I living my life? Knowing that all actions done with intention, I will be the heir of those actions. I will inherit my karma. Cannot take my possessions or my status from one life to the next, but I will be tied to this karma. I will experience the results of my actions. I will abide, supported by my karma. And so knowing this, how am I living my life? And so these 5 reflections are something that the Buddha encouraged us to think about. He said, it's an opportunity for all of us, whether we're monastics or lay people, to reflect upon these things frequently. The reason for this, of course, is to make real the truth of these things. Because the tendency we have is like that parent when that child is looking up into that void on the wall to say, don't look at it, don't look at it. That's the tendency that we have in our own mind. We have this tendency to willfully blind ourselves to these truths. Sure, we see other people getting old around us, but can we make it real to ourselves? When other people get sick, we think, oh, that's just how it is. But when we get sick, something has gone wrong, right? We see other people dying. We know that we also must die. And yet we live each day as if tomorrow will come. One day, tomorrow won't come. One day, this day, perhaps, could be the day that we die. So we get used to these ideas. We get used to the idea of being separated from youth, separated from health, separated from this life. We investigate what it means to be attached and what it means to let go. We understand that our actions matter. We investigate karma. We ask ourselves, how are we living our life? And so in this way, we incline our mind more and more towards seeing the truth, seeing the real nature of our lives. And we make a response. And so this is why we practice these 5 frequent reflections. And we'll see as the talk goes along why this relates to karma, the concept of Samvega. And so what we're going to do now is just 20 minutes of meditation practice, practicing these 5 frequent reflections taught by the Buddha. So let's all now take a comfortable posture and to allow yourself to just arrive in this body here and now. You might want to just take the shoulders up to the ears and roll them back, opening up the chest, feeling like you can let go of some of that tension, tightness in the body. And let go also of the morning of your day, of all the busyness and activity of your life. Just leaving the past in the past. And not worrying, not planning, not thinking about the future. The future is so uncertain. As though instead of being in the past or in the future, by letting go, we can be here, now. We can be present, aware, but relaxed. So allow yourself just to relax, letting go, softening, releasing. Just take a few moments to become more aware, more present. And perhaps you notice that merely by pausing, letting go, relaxing, naturally the mind becomes more calm, more peaceful. And so we'll use this calm, peaceful mind to begin the practice of the 5 frequent reflections. I am of the nature to age. Aging is my inescapable fate. having been born, I am subject to aging. And this is only natural. This is what happens when we have a body. And there is a truth to aging. We know that our bodies are growing older with every moment. We see the signs, wrinkles, grey hair, decaying teeth, stiff joints, our physical faculties growing frailer, our mental faculties diminishing. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. Knowing this, why am I so obsessed with youth? Knowing this truth of old age, how am I spending my time? And there is this truth of sickness. I am subject to sickness. Having been born, I will become sick. There are so many ways for this body to become ill. A virus, a bacteria, genetics, an accident. This body is fragile. This body is subject to sickness. Even now there's an ache, an old injury, a pain. Even now, things are going wrong in this body. And there's nothing I can do to prevent it. Why then am I so attached to this idea of health? Knowing it must change. The nature of this body is sickness. So how am I living my life? Knowing how fragile this body is. And I am subject to death. I have not gone beyond death. Having taken birth, it is natural that I must die. My human life is diminishing with every moment. My life is uncertain. There are so many ways I could die. Death is the only certainty in this life. And it's okay. It's natural. You can't hide from death. My friends and family can't help me when it comes to death. My money, my status will be of no use. And this body will fail. And there is nothing that I can do about it. Knowing this truth of death, how am I living my life? And I must become separated from all that is dear and pleasing to me. Separated from my possessions, from my job, from my status, separated from my friends, my family, my home, separated from all those things I love, all those things I hold on to. And there's nothing I can do about it. And it's okay. This is natural. Cannot hold on to anything in this world. And even this body, this me, all that I think is mine, this very sense of self, I must become separated from. Why then? Why do I grasp so strongly, cling to these things of the world? Why do I grasp this me, mine, I? I am the owner of my karma. All actions, body, speech, mind, done with intention, is karma. I am the heir to these actions. I will inherit my karma. I will abide supported by this karma, whether good or bad, unwholesome or wholesome, skillful or unskillful. Whatever actions done with intention, I will be the air. And knowing this, seeing for ourselves, even in this life, the consequences of our thoughts, speech, and actions. Knowing this, how am I living my life? How am I living my life? And just like me, all living beings everywhere are subject to old age, subject to sickness, subject to death, subject to separation, and subject to karma. Just like me, all other beings experience these things. And so we can contemplate this internally and externally, reflecting frequently on these truths. The Buddha said, reflecting in this way, the path is born inside us. We will overcome the fetters, destroy the underlying tendencies. We will see more and more in line with the truth and develop right view. And as we come towards the end of this short practice, taking a few moments to review the meditation. How was that for you? To contemplate, to reflect upon these themes. Was it challenging? Was there some difficulty for you? Was one of these themes harder to accept? Did you find a sense of peace, of calm, accepting these difficult truths? And how did it feel to question how you're living your life? Do you feel some urgency, some inspiration? And so after doing some reflection and generating a mind in line with the truth of the Dharma, we can dedicate the merits of our practice, thinking, may all beings hear the good Dharma. May all beings practice the teachings. And may all beings attain the end of suffering, liberation, nibbana. So these are the 5 frequent reflections, and I hope that it was okay to do these. Sometimes they can bring up some troubles in our heart, some difficulties. As we continually practice these, they become easier to understand and to accept, and they become easier to work with. We start to look out for those moments in our life where we try to hide these truths from our mind. When we catch ourselves in this way, it's like we are the bodhisattva in the palace. We're trying to disguise from ourselves these truths. And the spiritual path is all about gradually allowing ourselves to come into contact with these deep, very challenging, but inescapable truths, so that we can see more and more in line with what it is to live, what it means to be. And hopefully, having seen these truths, there's some sort of response, some sort of action that follows, some sort of movement, some sort of energy that propels us further along the spiritual path. Because when we see these things, we can't unsee them. Our mind will try to keep on disguising it from us, but there'll always be a little niggling feeling at the back of our mind, a little discomfort, a little unease, some disquieting that never allows us any comfort. One of my favorite images that the Buddha offers in his teachings is from the Atadanda Sutta. I have to get out of this screen. Oh, okay, so I'm going to try to escape. Doesn't seem to want to let me escape. That's okay. We'll just have to go slowly through everything. There we go. So this is an image, one of my favorite images from the Atadanda Sutta, where the Buddha talks about seeing the people of the world floundering like these fish in a shallow pool. And it's quite a beautiful sutta, so we'll just go through it very quickly. The Atadanda Sutta, Bhante Sujato translates it as taking up arms. It says peril stems from those who take up arms. Just look at people in conflict. I shall extol how I became stirred with a sense of urgency. So this sense of urgency, this is how Bhante Sujato is translating Saṃvega. He says, I saw this population flounder like fish in a little puddle. Seeing them fight with each other, fear came upon me. This world around is hollow. All directions are in turmoil. Wanting a home for myself, I saw nowhere unsettled. Even in settlements they fight, and seeing that, I grew uneasy. So this is the Atadanda Sutta, this idea of uneasiness. I wonder if any of you have ever had this feeling of uneasiness in your own lives. Perhaps this sense of disquiet, this sense of dis-ease in your own life was something that propelled you onto the spiritual path. For me, I can remember one particular occasion when I was standing at a very busy intersection, and there's a subway station, there's busy streets, and it's peak hour, and there's people flooding out of this subway station, traffic going everywhere, people walking in all directions. And I was waiting there for a friend, and I had this kind of wave of concern and fear, this kind of sense of discomfort. Who are all these people? Where are they going? What are they doing with their lives? What am I doing with my life? What does it mean to live? How should I be living my own life? I think for most of us, if we've ever practiced some spiritual teachings, it's usually in response to some sort of existential angst or crisis. Sure, maybe we learnt from our parents, or perhaps we were born in a Buddhist culture, but certainly our desire to practice, this energy that lies behind continuing to practice, this is something that results from seeing a little bit, glimpsing certain truths that make us want to inquire, that make us want to look deeper, that makes us want to be better people, makes us want to escape. And so this is some of the feelings that come along with Saṃvega. This is a cluster of emotions that we might experience in response to seeing something like old age, sickness, and death, or understanding that our actions have consequences. These things should disturb the mind. A spiritual path should disturb us a little bit. They should cause some agitation. They should shake us a little bit. They should be galvanic. They might inspire energy within us. And these are some of the ideas behind this word, Saṃvega. So Saṃvega is a word that perhaps is a bit tricky to translate with just one word in English. It comes from this root meaning to tremble, to shake, vij. And there's this intensifying prefix, which means thoroughly shake, thoroughly tremble. And this idea of shaking, of trembling, is something that we find time and time again when the Buddha is talking about this experience of Saṃvega. And it's something that I like to see I want to share with you in moving picture form. So here is some trembling, here is some shaking. And this is a video of people on a bridge in China. It's a glass bridge very high up in the mountains. And suddenly, very suddenly, people become aware of the fragility of their lives, the fragility of their existence. And how do they respond? So there's a bridge. We see this poor woman. Despair. This man shaking. Look at those legs, trembling. And this man, his wife perhaps laughing. This terror, panic. The sound's down, but she's screaming her head off here. And this poor man crying with fear, unable to move forward. Crying and crawling, trying to block out the view. Looking for a savior, for some shelter. And the Buddha, of course, said there is no such thing as a savior in this world. There's no shelter, no protector. And so when it comes to defining Samvega, this complicated word, we find synonyms like agitation, which can come from joy or despair, ubega, utrasa, which means a sense of alarm. We saw that in the video. We saw that agitation. We saw that alarm in these people. We saw bhaya, fear, pure, unadulterated terror in those people's eyes. We saw pilana. We saw this pressing down, this oppression, that man crouching on the ground as if the sky was falling on his head. We saw gatana, this shaking, trembling, and this upadawa, this distress. So these are the kind of feelings that come up sometimes when we're confronting the reality of our existence. We see this in English translated as words like agitation, fear, anxiety, thrill, religious emotion, and quite commonly it will be translated as urgency or shock, surprise, awe, religious emotion, dread, alarm, being stirred. And so these complicated emotions, these reactions, these are something that we don't often allow ourselves to feel. In fact, we try to cocoon ourselves from these things. We try to disguise the true nature of reality from us. We spend all of our energy in life actually trying to build up these walls to protect us from coming into contact with these truths. And then from time to time, it'll break through that veil that hides these things from us, becomes frayed or falls. And then suddenly we see things for what they are. It's like that moment in The Wizard of Oz where they see the man behind the curtain and the illusion is shattered and the truth becomes seen. It's like that way that we suddenly become aware that we are impermanent, that there is old age, or you look in the mirror and you see the gray hairs and you're like, what? It's true. Or when we get sick, we suddenly are aware of the fragility of the body and we react, we hate it so much, it's so annoying. When the pandemic came along, of course, everyone was suddenly aware of the fragility of life, this world that we had constructed as being safe and secure from these kinds of diseases. All of that was shattered. And people spoke then at the beginning of the pandemic of this spiritual response, this sense of urgency that they had. Suddenly, here we are. Oh, now's the time to practice, we said. This is true. The Buddha was right. There's sickness and there's impermanence and death is certain. And this was true. This is what happened. Suddenly that veil, that curtain that separates us from these truths was removed, and we had to confront the truth of old age, sickness, and death. We had to confront the truth of separation. And it was a moment, but just a moment. And then so quickly we become forgetful. So quickly we become back to normal. We now think about the pandemic as just being a mere irritation. Gone is that sense of urgency. Gone is that sense of now's the time for me to do my spiritual work. We're so blasé again, just like we were before the pandemic. And the truth is that these things are always happening. There's always sickness, there's always war. These things are going on all the time, but we're not looking at them. And so when they come up, when they're forced into our view, we seem surprised by them. But merely being exposed to these things and confronting the truth, just like those people on that bridge, seeing suddenly, how fragile their bodies are, how close to death they might be. This alone is not Samvega. This fear, this discomfort by itself is not Samvega. Samvega requires some sort of response. It's something that will spur us into action. So this is a kind of cluster of feelings that we have. We might have some sort of exposure to a truth, such as old age, sickness, or death. And this might inspire us to reflect upon those things. And as a consequence of that exposure and that reflection, to act, to be motivated. So I'll just continue to share my screen. I'll just quickly go over these themes of Samvega, because it's not all doom and gloom. There's, of course, the ones that I've mentioned already: birth, old age, sickness, and death. There's the brevity of life. There's the certainty of death. There's also the fear of suffering in samsara, the consequences of our actions, and this urgency to escape. But, like I say, it's not all doom and gloom, because there are some positive aspects to Samvega. There's the inspiration that comes, a sense of wonder of what it means to be alive, and also amazement, this seeing something that is so awe-inspiring. And in the suttas, it was things like maybe seeing some psychic powers or seeing the presence of the Buddha. And there's also this positive aspect of Samvega associated with the places that the Buddha attained enlightenment at, where he was born, where he gave his first sermon, and where he died. So these are places that we can go to and experience a positive form of Samvega. We can experience a positive inspiration, something that helps propel us on the spiritual path, because we have this example, just as when in the story of the Buddha leaving the palace and seeing old age, sickness, and death for the first time, he also encountered the sage, the spiritual practitioner. And so this was a positive form of Samvega, that he can experience some growth as a result of these things. And I asked you before, have you experienced Samvega in your own life? Have you had this experience of inspiration that drove you to practice more, that shook you, that agitated your mind, that made you want to practice the Dhamma? And have you had this sense of an uncanny experience? Have the hairs on your arm or the back of your neck been raised? So this is a common response to Samvega. It's one of my favorite words in English, horripilation. This is goosebumps, goose flesh. And this is something that comes along with this sense of Samvega, this urgency, it's hair raising. It makes you in tune suddenly with something that perhaps had been neglected by your awareness. It's like when you hear someone has died and you get a little shiver up your spine, or when you hear a good teaching and you get a wave of goosebumps over your body, or when you think about a theme of the Dhamma and it gives you a chill and propels you to practice. So this is an important part of Samvega, lomitasa. This is the goose flesh that happens. And it happens quite frequently in our life, and perhaps we don't pay attention to it. And it's a way of perhaps getting in touch, our body, our awareness, our subconscious, becoming in touch with something a little bit uncanny and a little bit weird and awe-inspiring that we don't often turn our attention to. And so this is something we see all the time in the suttas. We see someone saying, I had this, experience, and then I had this wave of Samvega and the hair stood up on my arms. And so this is something that maybe we might have experienced a little bit of ourselves in our own lives, this strange, uncanny feeling. And I think it's important to point this out because so much of our lives can be so boring and mundane. And yet there's opportunities always where our body or our mind is gently nudging us towards Samvega, to spiritual practice, making us think about these things. And it's up to us to pay attention to those moments, to ask, why is this happening? What does this mean? And so I mentioned that there's the suffering of samsara, and this is something that is encapsulated in these commentarial remarks on what Samvega is. So we have rebirth, aging, sickness and death, and then fear of suffering in the lower realms, suffering in the past that is rooted in the grounds of samsara that causes suffering in the present, suffering in the future, and suffering that is rooted in this need to search for nutrients, for food. And so those moments when we're in touch with this little bit of Samvega, where our hairs rise on our body and we glimpse a fraction, a tiny fraction of what suffering really is. But this is, of course, nothing in the big picture of things. The suffering in our own lives is minuscule compared to the huge amount of suffering that we've been through over countless lives. And it's this awareness of this big picture, which the Buddha pointed to in his teachings, this broadening of our understanding of our experience, that it isn't just limited to this life, but there's countless lives where we have been born, grown old, grown sick, and died, where we have been separated from all that is dear and pleasing to us, where we have abided because of our karma. And the Buddha said that one person alone, the bones that they've had in their past lives would be greater than a giant mountain. And so this big picture, this is something that the Buddha wanted us to connect with. And this feeling of Samvega, this disquiet, this discomfort, this fear, this is something that should discomfort us, that should create fear in our mind, that should galvanize us into action. Seeing this, we shouldn't forget these things. We don't want to be those spiritual practitioners who say, yes, yes, I memorized the teachings. Yes, yes, I chanted this. Yes, yes, I learnt that. Oh, I've already heard about old age, sickness, and death. I get it. And then at the end of their life, find that they haven't taken much of an interest in those teachings at all. They haven't learnt, they haven't synthesized this information in a way that's going to help them come out of suffering, to escape the round of samsara. And so I'll just go over this process that the Buddha outlines, because it's helpful to see how this actually works, that Samvega isn't just an idea or a concept, but it's a process, that it's something that happens over time. So we have this initial experience, could be positive or confronting. It gives us an awareness of reality. We develop some fear or perhaps some inspiration out of that. This is the Samvega coming up. Gives us this hair-raising amazement. And then this desire to be free from this big picture suffering of samsara. Then there is exertion. This is energy. And hopefully there's a sense of calmness and peace that comes along with accepting nature as it is. This is something we see all the time in the sutras. I had Samvega, amazing, wonderful. I had goosebumps, but then I felt calm and serene. And hopefully this experience of Samvega will lead us to liberation. And so there's a link between Samvega and energy. And there's a link between energy and right effort, that path factor of samavayama, where we exert ourselves to prevent unarisen, unwholesome states from arising, to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. This is abandoning bad actions, bad speech, bad behavior, bad thoughts, abandoning the defilements, abandoning the hindrances in our practice. And so we want to prevent and abandon unwholesomeness in our lives. And instead, we want to develop unarisen, wholesome states in our practice. And we want to maintain those wholesome states. So this is the fourfold division of samavayama, right effort, to prevent unwholesome states, to abandon unwholesome states, to develop wholesome states, and to maintain those wholesome states. And so there's a link between right effort and energy and Samvega. Samvega inspires energy. Samvega is like a nutriment for energy in the mind. And this is what helps us to practice our right effort. Without that energy, it's just pure fear and terror. It's just like those people on the bridge. They're in terror, they're in fear, they're shaking, but they're not doing anything to overcome it. They're not going to perhaps investigate why this fear is there on a deep level, not just the fear that comes from seeing that this life is impermanent, that this life is brief and short and vulnerable, but the bigger picture fear of ongoing suffering in samsara. So we need to do more than just experience terror or fear. We need to actually work with it, to practice with it. And there's a sutta called the Lion Sutta, which is one of my favorite suttas. There's a lion who roars in the jungle, and this loud roar, this terrifies all the beings in the jungle. It causes all the animals to scurry back to their homes. It causes even the elephants, the biggest creatures in the jungle, to wet the soil with urine, to plop out large elephant poos. That means it causes them to piss and shit in fear and terror when they hear the lion's roar. And the Buddha says that his teaching is like a lion's roar. This lion's roar inspires Samvega. And even the gods, when they hear these teachings, they become scared. They say, oh my gosh, the Buddha has taught on the impermanence of life, the certainty of death. It turns out that we too are impermanent. And they have this panic, this fear, this dread, this terror that comes up. Suddenly that veil that they cocoon themselves away from the reality of their true existence, the fact that they're impermanent, that they are not going to last, that they're still attached to the process of self. Suddenly this becomes aware for them and they experience Samvega. And so this is an important way to think about Samvega. This awareness needs to stimulate us. And there's so many ways that the Buddha talked about ways that we can use Samvega in our practice to inspire us. One of those was at the beginning of the talk. I showed an image to you of someone with their head on fire. I'll share it with you again, because this is how the Buddha suggested that we practice. Said, we should practice as if our head was on fire, or if our clothes were on fire. When we practice in this way, we give up those bad, unskillful qualities. We develop this enthusiasm, this effort, this zeal, this vigor, this perseverance, mindfulness, and situational awareness. So just imagine your head was on fire. You would urgently try to put that fire out. We are on fire. We are in danger. We must urgently practice the path. And this sense of urgency is something that the Buddha talked about in one of my favorite suttas, which is the Sutta of the Goad. I'm not sure if any of you know what a goad is. A goad is like, actually I have a picture here, I'll show you. Goad is a long and pointy stick. Whoop. I share my screen again, forgive the technological slowness. Here we have a goad. This is a long and pointy stick that they use to train animals. And the way they do it, of course, is by sticking it into the animal in order to get it to move. Remember that definition of Saṃvega: to tremble, to be stirred, to be agitated, to move, to be moved. This is Saṃvega, and this is what happens with this goad when the owner of the animal pushes it into the skin. And so to finish, I'll just share these 4 images with you that the Buddha taught in this sutta, the simile of the goad, where he compares people to horses. So he said, so a horse is, of course, one of the poor animals that would have experienced a goad when it was being trained. And so he said that there's 4 types of people in this world who are like horses. So the first type of horse is the kind of horse that's a quick learner. When it sees just the shadow of the goad, then very quickly it knows, I should move. I should be stirred into action. And so the Buddha said, this is like a person who, just having heard that someone in the next village had died, that person thinking the same thing will happen to me is stirred into action. Just like those gods, they heard, actually, I'm impermanent. I should do something about it. In the same way, when a person hears that someone has died, they think to themselves, I'm of the same nature. How am I living my life? And so this is like a kind of horse that learns quickly. The second kind of horse is a bit slower to learn. This is the kind of horse that when it sees the shadow of the goad, it doesn't move. When it feels the prick into the hairs of its skin, then it thinks, hang on a second, I should move. My master wants me to move. And it's stirred, Saṃvega'd into action. And this is like the kind of person who actually sees someone who is dead in front of them. They didn't hear about a dead person. They needed to see that body to make it real for themselves. And then they think, I too am of the same nature. How am I living my life? They're stirred into action from seeing the body. But they needed that little bit more than just hearing about death. They needed to see it, like that horse needed to experience the prick in its skin. The next horse that's like a person is the kind of horse that needs to be stuck even deeper into the flesh in order to be stirred, in order to move. So this horse is a bit of a slow learner. It needs a little bit more pain to make it real. This is a person who sees a dead person in front of them, but it's someone that they care for. It's someone that they love. And that's why it matters to them. And maybe this is how most of us are. We know that people are dying out there in the world right now, but it doesn't affect us. It doesn't inspire us to practice the Dhamma. It doesn't motivate us. It doesn't stir us. And of course, maybe that's a way we protect ourselves. We can't be too emotionally invested in every living being's death, but we can be aware that this will happen to me. We shouldn't wait to have an experience that responds to death only in relation to our own attachment, in the way that this person only fears death because a loved one, someone they care for, has died. We shouldn't wait for someone that is near to us, dear to us, for that to become a truth in our minds. But this is how most people will behave. Only when it's someone that matters to them will they go through these process of grief, will they be struck by the truth that all beings must die. And this is what happens when someone dies in our life. There is an opportunity for us to question how we're living. And this is something that people report to me quite frequently, that in the process of grief, there's this unpicking of their own life, this questioning of, well, this person near to me died. What am I doing? How am I living? And so there should be some change that comes from an experience, an association with death. But maybe we shouldn't wait until it's someone close to us to appreciate the significance that all beings are impermanent, that all beings must die. Because this horse, this person, is a bit of a slow learner. And the last horse, the last person, is the horse that doesn't tremble at the shadow of the whip, doesn't move when pricked, doesn't get stirred even when that goad is deep in the flesh. But this horse needs a lot of pain. This horse needs that goad to be stuck deep, deep into the bone. Only then is it real. Only then does the horse think, I should move. A very slow learner. And this horse, the Buddha said, is like a person who doesn't understand, doesn't appreciate, doesn't get that impermanence is real, doesn't understand the significance, the certainty of death, until they are on their deathbed themselves. Only then does it become real. And I've known people like this in my work as a chaplain who don't believe that they're going to die, even when they're in the process of dying. They still have some hope. They still have some illusion that there will be some breakthrough that will save them, that this won't be the time of their death. And they resist and they fight. They're like this slow learning horse that doesn't get it, doesn't appreciate it. Even in the last moments, only then will they become aware of death. And then, of course, it's too late to ask, how am I living my life? It's too late. Your life has been lived, your opportunity has been lost. Possibilities for goodness, wholesomeness, for developing your mind have been wasted. And so we don't want to be like this horse. We don't want to be like that person. We want to be smart. We want to be the kind of horse that just seeing the mere shadow of that whip, of that goad, is stirred, Samvega, into action. And so this is Saṃvega. Having heard the teachings, having done the reflection on the 5 frequent meditations, how are we living our life? How are you living your life? Do you have energy in your practice? Are you inspired by the Dhamma? Are you maybe closing your eyes a little at the truths of the world? Are you denying the reality of your existence? But a word of caution before I finish up. We don't want to be in a state of constant agitation. We don't want to be in a state of panic, running around. Sure, the Buddha said to practice like your head is on fire, but the idea is to quench that fire, to put it out, not to run around screaming and letting it burn. And to quench it out, we need to calm the mind. We need to become more tranquil and find some peace. And so there's some necessity when we practice Samvega to balance it with some acceptance, some kindness, some understanding, and a sense of peace that allows us to have almost like a calm agitation, calm energy that is aware and understands the truth of impermanence, of the certainty of old age, sickness, and death, and yet is peaceful and calm in response. And so this is very important, that we balance our practice of perhaps looking at confronting themes like death or impermanence. We balance that with calming meditations like metta or meditation on the breath, so that we have a balanced mind. The idea isn't to be in a constant state of energetic frenzy and panic about the brevity of life, but to have a sustained and determined practice that is rooted in acceptance and equanimity of the truth of what it means to be alive. And so this is a short talk about Samvega, and I hope that it has been of some benefit to you and that it will help you in your practice.
Sadhu, 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 Bhante, for nice sharing. It's very clear. I think most of us are in the third and fourth type of horse. Okay. Now we are open for Q&A. If any one of you would like to ask some questions, please raise your virtual hand. We'll unmute you and you may ask Bhante the question pertaining to this talk.
Feel free to ask a question if you'd like, although some of you are looking a bit scared maybe. Please don't be scared. Or any responses? Have you experienced Samvega in your own life? Was there a particular thing that propelled you further on the spiritual path, something that made you want to practice more? I think most people here probably had something.
Okay. Open to let them unmute. This is very quiet.
There's a question
Some questions.
Okay. There's a question from...
You all may unmute. Thanks, Bhante.
So I can see that there's a question in the chat. Shall I respond to that one?
Yes, please, Bhante.
So the question is from Chia Chi Mun. How should we advise our elderly family members to practice Samvega? So it's a good question because you think at the end of someone's life, that's when this urgency would really start to come into play. you'd think that at the end of someone's life, that's when you'd have this keen awareness that your life is quickly diminishing, that your time is running out, that now is the time for spiritual practice. But unfortunately, because of the habit pattern of our mind, it's very difficult as people get older to transform their mind in the same way that they might when they were younger. What happens over the course of our life is that the thoughts we have, the actions we do, the kinds of habits that build up in our mind, these stain the mind, and this becomes our propensity. And then there's this kind of feeling of like just giving up on trying because, you know, they've done a whole life and there's not much left, so why bother? But there's always an opportunity to develop on the spiritual path. And so for people who are older, it's a good opportunity as they get towards the end of their life to reflect upon their good qualities, the things that they've done that have been generous and kind, the satisfaction they can have from perhaps raising a family, and to focus on these things as inspiration. It might not be easy for them to get out and to do a lot more things, but they can definitely work with Chaganusati, this recollection of their good quality, of their generosity, and to develop a mind that is inspired by goodness. And there's also an opportunity for people to practice meditation as they get older. They have less activities to do, and so they have more opportunities to practice meditation. And that's an area where they can see, hopefully they can expect to see some rapid growth if they put some energy into it. And it's difficult because the habit pattern of people's mind is of such that we will seek comfort and we will seek distraction. We will seek other activities, anything but meditation. And if we haven't lived a good life, if we've not developed our mind in younger years, then it's very difficult sometimes for older people to practice. But this isn't always the case. So I would encourage people who are older to spend some time in reflection and development. So the practice that we did at the beginning of the meditation, this is a patisankar. This is a reflection-based practice. It doesn't require a lot of silence in the mind. It requires a thinking mind. And so for some people who haven't developed their mind through Chitta Bhavana, haven't developed their mind through samadhi practice, they can practice a reflection really easily. They can do guided meditations and things like that. And so in this way, they're inclining their mind towards wholesomeness, inclining their mind towards goodness. But at the same time, we need to be aware that if we wait to the very end of our life, then we've waited too long. The time to act in our spiritual practice is now. We don't know what will come tomorrow. And if we wait until, you know, our deathbed to try and transform our mind, then it's going to be far too late. So regardless of anyone's age, now is the time to start practicing and don't delay. And so someone else has asked here, thank you, Bobby. It would help to be able to see the big picture of suffering in samsara as our single life now. Any analogies? Yes. So there's the Anamatagga Samyutta. I think it's Samyutta number 15. Don't take my word for it. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Anamatagga Sutta, the Sutta of Unknowable Beginnings, which is full of wonderful similes that should slightly disturb and hopefully inspire the mind to practice. These are similes like the amount of tears that you have shed in all of your lives. Is it lesser or greater than the oceans in the world? And the Buddha says it's greater than all the oceans. And just think about the suffering involved in that. You have been crying life after life after life after life after life. You've had tragedies and separation, sadnesses, grief, so much sadness, so much grief, so many tears, that it's more than the water in all the oceans. And he says that even the amount of blood that has been shed when you are an animal killed for food is greater than all of the blood in the oceans. And this Samyutta is full of these kinds of analogies where we see this big picture. And it's a very beautiful Samyutta. If you can check it out, it should inspire that kind of visceral response of wanting to transform your life. And that's, of course, where we saw that mountain of bones image as well from the Anamataka Samyutta. Yes, and so Chan is saying here, when you have an urgency to practice initially, it wears off eventually. And that's why it's so good to come and listen to some teachings. And this is why you find from time to time, teachers will really try to inspire you and to force you to look at these things and to challenge you to react in some way. Because we have this tendency to just slip back into a comfortable posture. We just want to sit down on the comfortable chair and relax. And of course, in that moment, it feels good. There's some pleasure in that. But actually what we need is a little bit of energy that moves us forward. We want to keep moving forward in our practice. And so that requires some exertion. We don't want to be too overly caffeinated in our practice. We don't want to become one of those people who's a bit overzealous or a little bit fundamentalist in their practice. And you probably encountered people like that who are a little bit over the top. And there's a word in a phrase in Zen practice where someone says that these type of people, they stink like Zen. They're doing too much. They're trying too hard. They're being overly they're trying too hard, and they're being probably a bit of an annoyance. So you want to maintain a kind of balance in your life, but you want to be moving forward. You want to be able to see the results of your practice. You want to ensure that you're lessening those unwholesome qualities and multiplying your good qualities. And so it could just be that every day you take a few moments to reflect. How have I lived my life today? Did I do some actions that were bad, that were unwholesome? And what did I do that was good? It could be that once a week you dedicate some time to doing those 5 frequent reflections. And in this way, we touch back into our practice regularly. It's so important that we have this renewal of our practice, that we keep on coming back to our practice, that we don't neglect our practice. And it doesn't have to be, as some people think, we have to go away on a retreat, or we can only do it when the conditions are right, or it needs to be the perfect time of the day, or it has to be this perfect moment. We can't wait for the right conditions. We have to work with what we've got. And for me, just looking around is an opportunity for Samvega. I walk down the street and there's a dead bird. This is the perception of death. I am of the same nature. You look at so many dinner tables. You don't need to go all the way to a cemetery and do a corpse meditation. You can see on dinner tables, these were once living beings. This is perhaps my fate if I don't do good actions in this life. Or when you see an old person, when you see someone who is becoming sick, this will also happen to me. It's about that awareness, shifting our experience so that we don't disguise those truths, that we don't blind ourselves with willful ignorance, that we see these things for what they are. And over time, we build up these perceptions, we build up this awareness of these truths, and they become deeply ingrained in our thinking, so that these things are no longer a surprise to us, that these are something that we accept as spiritual teachings. And then, of course, we need to keep on sprinkling the Dharma throughout our lives. So keep on listening to teachings, keep on reading the suttas, keep on practicing meditation. And over time, these things will help you to move forward in your practice. And so Lena is asking, how can we inspire our children to have Samvega and urgency in their practice? Well, we can't do it for other people. We can't force other people to practice the Dhamma. They need to realize it for themselves as being something important and worth developing. And the best way that we can do that is to be a good example of Dharma practice to them. So many parents I know, and I'm not saying this is you at all, Lena. So many parents I know, when I speak to their young people, they say that there's this gap between how their parents want them to be and what their parents want them to do and learn and to study, and how their parents behave. They'll say things like, our parents want us to take 5 precepts, but there's like a liquor cabinet in our living room. Or our parents say that this is impermanent, yet they keep on living as if every day is permanent. And they see this kind of hypocrisy in their parents. And so if we want to be good spiritual inspirations for our children and for those people around us, then we need to make sure that we're walking the talk, that we're living the path sincerely and trying to cut out as much of that hypocrisy as possible. And so when it comes to Samvega and teaching our young people, you want to make sure that you're doing all the things that you want to in your life. You want to make sure that you're not putting off things for an uncertain future. You want to make sure that your young people see that you're aware of the preciousness of this life, and that you don't waste time getting upset about small things, that you don't spend time in arguments, that you are the kind of person who lets go easily and things like that. And that's the way that I would recommend inspiring young people, but not forcing them and not kind of scaring them with the idea of impermanence. I think young people have enough anxiety, but when they're ready to come to these sorts of teachings, just remember that this is a wisdom teaching and that it requires a little bit of life knowledge and development. And it's very true that young people have this belief that they'll live forever and that bad things will never happen to them. But old people like us, having lived a full life, we have glimpses into these things. And for many young people, it's just not in their experience. But one other good thing that could be useful is to allow young people to spend some time with older generations so that they get to see that there is this process of life, and to allow them to see things like death, to allow them to accept these as normal, natural parts of life. And hopefully, if they've got a little bit of wisdom, then this will help transform their minds. And so there's a comment here from Dai. Hello, Dai. Great to see you. That image of the fish floundering in shallow mud. Yes, the Atadanda Sutta. And that's why I use these, I often use imagery in my teachings, especially with these online things, because I find it really powerful. The Buddha's use of similes to describe these very complicated emotional and spiritual concepts is really profound. And so in the next talk that I'll be giving and the one after that, I'll be using imagery as well. I think that a lot of us are visual learners, and that at the time of the Buddha, you can imagine people were listening so carefully to every word and they had to remember it. And that's why he used so many powerful images, because that helped you remember the teachings. You didn't have a book, definitely didn't have the internet. You couldn't just check it up. So you had to remember these things, and those similes are so powerful. And so I'll be giving a talk, actually the third talk I'll do for the Maha Satipatthana Buddha Society is on the similes of the Buddha. And I'll be looking at a visual journey for that. So I don't know if there's any more questions.
Yes, Bhante, I think we will wrap up with the last question. Okay, what is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
So we create the meaning of life. And so it's up to you. So what kind of meaning do you want to create in your life? And this is what we see people doing all the time. And this is why I'm so inspired by the Buddha and teachers who are creating really important meanings within their own lives and trying to share those meanings with others. So whatever we do in life, if we can create meaning, then we've already found the meaning of life. And of course, the other answer to that, Terence, is 42. That's the meaning of life.
Great, okay. Thank you very much for your sharing today. Just to highlight to everyone online and on Zoom, Bhante's next talk, organized by MSBS, will be on the 30th April 2022, the same time. And title will be Beyond the Doom and Gloom.
Yes, I wonder, is it possible that there's something beyond the doom and gloom, or is it false advertising? We'll find out.
Okay, now we'll go to the ending session. We'll ask for forgiveness from Bhante and everyone for all our shortcomings. Can Bhante lead us with a chant of asking for forgiveness and taking and sharing of merits and dedication of merits?
You know, this isn't often something that I do. So, Terence, please lead the chanting in the way that you would usually chant.
But then,
it'd be much easier that way.
But then I can't hear you, Bhante.
Oh. Is my microphone still working? Yes. So I was saying,
it's working. I just can't hear what you say.
Okay. So this isn't something that I usually do in Pali. So I invite you to lead the chanting for this session yourself, Terence.
Okay. Okay. Then I'll lead the chanting. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayam kamame bante uri panya tathagata. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayam kamame dhamma sandittika akalika. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayam kamame sangha patipana anuttara.
And of course, there is nothing to forgive, but please forgive me if by body, speech, or mind I have done anything that requires forgiveness.
Bhante.
And so now we'll practice the dedication of merits. Akasata chabumata devanaga mahidika punang tam anamoditva chiram rakantu loka sasanang etavata cha amhe hi sampadang punya sampadang sabe dewa sabe bhuta sabe sata anumodantu sabe satpati siddhya sa idam me nyatinam hotu sukhita hontu nyateyo idam me nyatinam hotu sukhita hontu nyateyo idam me nyatinam hotu sukhita hontu nyateyo imina puna kamena mame bala samagamo satam samagamo hotu wawa nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Bhante, for today's sharing. Look forward to your future sharing.
Okay, very good. Thank you for inviting me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share the Dharma with my friends in Malaysia.
Thank you, Bhante.
Take care, everyone. Be good.
Thank you, Bhante.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante. Be happy, healthy, and blessed.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bhante.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante.